Mayday, back with another Monday. A beautiful, beautiful Monday. Everything is fine. Alright. Today's video is what you've all not been waiting for, but we're gonna do it anyway. I'm not talking with the pen the whole video. It's not happening. Before we get into that though, last Monday for Mayday, we did cringy Wattpad series, and I forgot to do fit of the day. So this is not gonna be the fit of the day. This is just something I threw on because
we dress for dinner here. So
no, again, we dress for dinner around here, and the fit of the day is gonna be what should have been for Wattpad, and I think that that'll suffice. Yeah, what's going on? How are you? So if you are new, hi, welcome. Sometimes, not all the time, but I try to every Monday do a Monday with Mayday. It's just a little video where I do some type of talking. Maybe I do reviews. I think I've done a couple movies. Done FNAF, Willy's Wonderland. So yeah, if you're interested in checking out all the other Mondays that I've done, the link will be down below in the description box. And it should be right there or somewhere over there. I'm not sure. So yeah, go ahead and take a look at the playlist if you would like. But today, oh god, today, I have been waiting for today for so long, right? And I wanted to record it, but every time I tried to record it, I either fell asleep or there was construction like right outside my window. Yeah, that, and I needed to take an extra minute to rewatch the movie we're about to talk about. Today, we are going to be talking about... I have to put my disclaimer out there because, you know, I don't know who watches this, but this movie is rated R. This is going to be R-rated content. It's got to do with a bit of sexuality, death, just like certain things that might trigger you. So, you know, if that kind of stuff triggers you, just move on. And I do have to note, if you haven't watched the movie, go ahead and watch the movie. Like, what are you doing? Go watch the movie and then come back to this video, okay? But this is just basically gonna be my review and my thoughts on the movie because honestly, I'm gonna just put it out there. I thought it was a great movie. And when I went to go first see it, I went to go see it with friends in like the movie theater. And obviously, if you've known, you've seen it, and you were in the theater when it happened, you know, the trailer doesn't help. The trailer does not help at all. Like, I'm gonna put the trailer down below, so if you haven't watched it, go watch the trailer. They really, like, there was no forewarnings in it. And like, I'm the type of person to where if I watch movies, I almost always predict the ending. And then sometimes the trailer just leaves you with so much, like, it's like, why even bother watching the movie? You basically see the movie in the trailer. So I think that whoever did the marketing for this, the trailer for this, did a really good job of hiding those twists and turns. But yeah, let's get into it. So first we're gonna recap the movie and recall all of the unhingedness of this movie. But basically this movie is about a guy named Oliver Quick. He is basically struggling, the plot of it is struggling to fit into his new Oxford school. It's a very like English prep school basically, where everyone comes from like titles and money. The movie starts off with Oliver talking to somebody. We don't know who, but he's basically talking about Saltburn and Felix and how everyone thought that he was in love with Felix. Now, disclaimer, I think another reason this movie caught me by surprise, you know, like pants down to the ankles surprised, is because I fully thought that this was gonna be like just a typical like BL story, maybe a little darker, because it definitely had like dark undertones to it, but I thought this was definitely going to be like a love tragedy or something, right? And while it is, it also isn't. So we open up with Oliver talking about Felix, and the movie just kind of like starts immediately. As soon as he gets into his school, he's already looked down upon by this guy named Farley, who's like, oh, nice jacket, just like making fun of him. Obviously this rubs like Oliver the wrong way, but he's like, I don't know, I guess kind of used to it. So he meets the same dude that made fun of him in the school like entrance, and they have like some sort of weird like counselor critique session with their papers. So Farley isn't too impressed by Oliver's writing. Oliver's very defensive and like very kind of like snobbish, just a little bit. But not in like the preppy I'm better than you way, and then in like and I'm smarter than you didn't even read or do the assignment, teacher, we had homework yesterday and you didn't grade it type snob, which is kind of interesting because, you know, I feel like for a person that is desperate to fit in, like, you know, your effort is just kind of crazy right now. You know, you're making more enemies than you are friends. But I get it. Nobody's really giving him the benefit of the doubt. So at this point, why am I trying to cater to y'all, right? So he goes to lunch or whatever cafeteria eating area that they have. And he's finding a little bit of a hard time, a place to sit. Everyone's kind of like ignoring him, except for this one dude. Michael is like, hey, you know, we're kind of the same here immediately. Like, you know, let's be friends. Other than this one chick that doesn't come out of her room, you and I are losers. We're nobody. We come from nothing. We should stick together. And, you know, while this sounds great, Michael is, in one word, unhinged. Immediately during their first meeting, he's like, oh, I'm a you know, ask me any type of math problem, I can just do it. I don't even like math. And, you know, Oliver, he's like, oh, you know, whatever, yeah, I believe you. But then Michael gets like very like aggressive with it, like screaming in the cafeteria type, you know, oh no, ask me a question, you know. Does, and he answers it in like a very like creepy, like the creepiest possible way that you could answer a math problem. That's how he does it. So things, I guess, sort of progress with their friendship because they're kind of like stuck with each other at this point, at least in Michael's eyes. Oliver, I'm not so sure. He's like slowly pining after Felix. And I forgot to mention, before he even went to lunch, the first person that he like saw and looked at was Felix through his window. There's already like some sort of like infatuation with Felix. We don't really know what it is because they haven't met. So it's kind of just like you see somebody that you think is attractive. That's at least the thought process that I was going with. Just kind of looking at him from a distance, from afar, in different locations that Oliver is. Felix is also there. So they're in the library, Michael and Oliver, and he's like, yeah, you know, there's this big Christmas party and you and I are just not invited. And he says it in such a like a pessimistic, like bitter tone, to where as if we wanted to go, you know, we're gonna stick through this together and just kind of like say F you to all these prep kids. And honestly, it's kind of refreshing if he wasn't like so aggressive, you know. I think he just came on a little too strong, but I don't know where that attitude, that energy is coming from. But like, also I'm living for it, right? After this, Oliver quickly becomes even more infatuated with Felix, wanting to like be friends with him. So it just so happens that the fates have like kind of answered Oliver's unrequited love, pining from a distance, whatever it is. And Felix has a flat tire. He goes back to check to make sure that Felix is okay. Felix is like, yeah, I'm late for like some sort of like important test. I have a flat tire and I can't really fix it. So Oliver, you know, being Oliver and I guess wanting to like get Felix to like him, was like, hey, you know, I'm not going anywhere, you know, you could definitely use my bike. And Felix is kind of like baffled by this because he doesn't really know this person. They're just offering to do something really kind for him. And he's like, oh my God, that's amazing. Yeah. And he was like, yeah, you know, don't worry about it. We go to the same school. I can get my bag back from you later. Felix is like, we go to the same school. Kind of upsets Oliver just a little bit. Felix weirdly implies that, you know, oh, you can wheel my bike back to school as well. And judging from Oliver's initial, like, it's just for a split second, but his little flinch of like, oh, like shock or surprise to when Felix suggests this, I don't think that it's very near. I think it's kind of far enough to be a hassle, but not far enough for him not to do it. But he agrees to do this. Fast forward to Oliver and Michael just at the pub chilling, and Michael being Michael, he gets up to go to use the bathroom and asks Oliver to go to the bar to like get him a drink. While he's at the bar, Oliver is noticed by Felix in the distance and his large group of friends. He sees this person that saved him and he's like, oh my God, hey, what's going on? Oliver, come on over, come be friends. And that's kind of like the start of their like sort of friendship, right? So he brings him over and Farley is there, the dude that like they just have this weird like hate relationship right off the bat. Now granted, Farley did initiate this. He came off like very like snobbish and rude and just, I don't know, just overall his energy towards Oliver was just crazy. Like just for you not to have met somebody and then the first thing you do is like kind of like bash on their work, which I get what Farley was trying to say, but I'm a big firm believer in like, it's not how you say it or what you say, it's how you say it. Farley's kind of giving him like this weird stank eye, but you know, Oliver's just like kind of drinking with them, and then he's like told for some weird rule, I don't really get the rule, but it doesn't matter, that he has to go buy shots for everyone at the table. He doesn't have enough money because, you know, he doesn't come from money. It's kind of obvious he doesn't come from a lot, and the drinks are really expensive there. So Felix kind of gets upset at Farley for telling him that he has to like go get the drinks. He's like, you know, they're expensive, like why would you do that to him? And he sees Oliver struggling, so he goes over and pays for the drinks in a way that doesn't, I guess, demasculate Ollie or makes him feel any type of way. He's just like, oh, you know, I found this money on the floor that you dropped, and you know, I was gonna steal it, but I figured, you know, I'll do the right thing. And then Oliver's like, hey, thanks, I'll pay you back later. And he's like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And he just takes the drinks over, and then they have a really beautiful like sort of bromance friendship kind of thing, and it's nice, you know, they're just kind of like talking, chilling, and then Ollie and him kind of exchange backstories to where Felix reveals that him and Farley are like cousins, brothers, something like that. Something to where like his aunt, which is Farley's mom, ran away from England to America and ended up getting cut off by their family. But the dad, Felix's dad, felt bad, so he ended up paying for Farley's education. Oliver's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool, I guess. Very lucky for Farley. Felix is kind of trying to like probe Ollie to see like his backstory, but he's very like guarded about it. And then it's revealed that his father has some sort of mental health issues, maybe alcoholism. His mother has like some sort of drug addiction. This makes Felix feel bad for him, obviously. And things start escalating to the point where Oliver is being sort of possessive over Felix, like a parasite. And I don't mean to call him a parasite, like you know, like, oh, but he's like stuck to Felix like glue. Wherever Felix is, Oliver is. One day, Oliver overhears Felix with one of his conquests, and she's talking about how he's really weird, Oliver. Nobody really likes him because he's a scholarship boy because he gets his clothes from like some off-brand like place or whatever. And while that doesn't matter, you know, Felix is kind of like, oh, that's very rude of you, but not in a way that like, listen, if you were my supposed best friend and the best that you can do for me when somebody is talking trash about me is like, oh, you're just so rude, and then you proceed to like still associate yourself with them, I don't know, that's just kind of a red flag for me. So he defends Oliver, but not enough to my liking. So Oliver's kind of like, at this point, being kind of creepy, low-key, you know? He's staring at Felix outside of like his window while he's like hooking up with this other girl, and still on that weird like joint at the hip kind of attention with him. And I guess Felix starts to feel that, a bit of suffocated by him, and they start to like drift a little bit because Felix is like, hey, you know, I kind of need my space. You're kind of, you know, you're being a lot for me right now. One of Felix's conquests comes by looking for Felix. Obviously he's not there, he's out doing whatever Felix is doing. She gets in her head that the quickest way to make Felix jealous is to hook up with Oliver. So she tries, and she's like, hey, you know, do you think Felix will be jealous? And Oliver's like, nah, I don't, you know, I don't think he'll like register that you and I are even together, because he goes after so many girls, and so many girls throw themselves at him, you know. So she leaves like frustrated, and then Oliver gets a phone call, and this phone call, we come to find out, is about Oliver's dad, who just dies. He ends up cracking his head on the pavement, something really like crazy, and he goes to Felix for comfort. Felix does end up comforting him, and their relationship, I guess, is trauma bonded because Felix feels bad for him. Graduation comes, you know, fast forward, graduation comes, and Farley's making some weird digs about Oliver's appearance because he's just barely getting by, you know, to passing as one of the kids. And I think Michael also made a remark calling him a bootlicker, you know, saying that, oh, you know, Felix is gonna get bored of you. Felix decides to take him to this like little ravine, river, wherever it's called. he tells them about this tradition about how when somebody in his family dies, they write their name on a rock and then they throw it in the river just to like honor them or something, which is kind of like sweet, honor the memory of like Oliver's dad. So they throw the rock into the river and it lands in a pile of vomit, which is crazy. So yeah, and then things start to get a little bit more darker because Oliver's talking about how he doesn't want to go home because it's just bad memories of him having to like save his mom by like, you know, forcing her to throw up so she's an OD and other stuff. And this makes like Felix feel really bad for him. So much to the point so where he invites him to Saltburn. So he goes. And Saltburn is this beautiful, beautiful, breathtaking estate, right? From the moment that Oliver walks in, he's like kind of like enchanted by it. And immediately when he goes in, the servant there, Duncan, I think his name, is not having it that Oliver is there. Just right off the rip, does not like this kid. So, you know, he's kind of like a little, I think, overprotective of the family, which I guess makes sense, you know? So Felix swoops in, have a big house, so he's explaining, you know, here's this, here's that. I accidentally figured my cousin there, you know, which is wild. So on his way to the library, Felix walks by Felicia, which is Felix's sister, who's kind of like looking at him like just a very like thirsty, like thirst trap type vibe she was trying to go for, obviously trying to seduce him. On his way, he overhears Felix's family talking about like how tragic that Oliver is, you know, about his family's history and just him in general, and like, oh god, it just feels so bad for you type vibes. And Farley thought this whole movie was hilarious. Like, man gave no shit. Elspeth, right, which is Felix's mother, has a friend there named Pamela that has been crashing with them for a while. So she like kind of like stares her off to go get tea from some chick named Annie that's like one of their servants or whatever. And she's like very infatuated by Oliver and saying, you know, oh, he's so good looking and like, you know, I just want to know everything about your trauma and your past, and like really digging into him some like very rude and invasive like questions. So Oliver does a little bit of research like on the place, you know, in general, and like is impressing the family with like all of his like ins and outs and everything about it. And his obsession with Felix is like kind of getting a little bit more intense. Okay, I'm not gonna show the scene. I'm gonna show you my dad's reaction to the scene.
Oh my god. All right.
In the scene, the obsession with him becomes a little bit more like intense. So much to the point where he's like drinking Felix's bathwater, you know? And when I tell you, the scene like shocked me so hard to my core, because like it wasn't just the fact that it was nasty, it was just like the level of obsession was crazy. Like I didn't expect it to go that far, you know? After that weird little encounter, everybody kind of wants a piece of Felix, but not in like the best ways. Obviously Felicia wants him a little bit like more intimately. And Oliver kind of like initiates this the first time by going out at night to like check on her with a blanket and just make sure she's okay. So he kind of like initiates and starts that like weird interaction with Felicia. So after he slurps down some bathwater, he goes out to Felicia, who's down in like this really like raunchy like, you know, dress or whatever, and is trying to like seduce her, which right after the bath scene to me is wild, because you literally just, you know, did what you did, right? Oh yeah, so I know what I forgot. Okay, so before that is revealed, he's starting to like kind of work over the family in a way that's like trying to get him to like him, you know? So he gets in good with the dad by like mentioning like the famous like plates and like other stuff that they have there. And for the mom, she reveals that Pamela, their friend, ended up being peeled away, in her words, off the estate because they just had enough of her, you know? She was just kind of like mooching off the family. She just needed to go. And he's like kind of planting the seeds of like doubts, feeding off her like gossiping need and by mentioning that Pamela could have been a liar, this, that, and the third, or whatever. And, you know, she casually mentions that her daughter has like a weird sex obsession and like an eating disorder. So Oliver uses that to kind of like play off of Felicia's like, you know, vulnerability. So he's like telling her in like this weird like kind of like BDSM like tone, like, oh, you're gonna eat breakfast and you're gonna stay there and do all this other stuff, you know. And this is very arousing to Felicia, and he like starts to be a little bit more intimate with her, and she's like, you know, Ollie, I think you're great, but this, you know, it's not really the time of the month. It's only funny. It's only funny because while we were in the movie theater, my sister left to go get fries with ketchup. So imagine eating fries with ketchup when this scene is going on. He tells Ollie like, oh, you know, it's not the time of the month. And he's like, you think that bothers me? And I was like taken back, because, you know, I've heard people doing this, but like to see it on the big screen is kind of crazy. He proceeds to like be intimate with her while she's on her period, and he's like, you know, oh, lucky for you, I'm a vampire. So obviously, you know, my sister stopped eating her fries immediately. So that scene plays out, and ooh, my God, I didn't know what to do with myself after that. Like, I didn't know what I was watching anymore, because it's like right after the bad scene and then right after that scene is crazy, you know. After he does that, Farley kind of like sees this and is like, you know, like, oh, I knew you were like, you know, crazy, like just weird. I don't think he knew about the period stuff, but he just saw the way that they were like getting intimate. He was like, you know, it's kind of messed up. So he goes and he tells Felix, who obviously is upset. And the next morning, you can tell that he's like kind of mad at Oliver. Oliver is kind of like weirdly like pushing food on Felicia, which is never a good idea for somebody with an eating disorder, you know. Ends up like going to go purge or whatever she's like doing. Family casually mentions at breakfast, you know, that they're gonna throw Oliver a birthday party. And Farley, you know, unsurprisingly is pissed about this, because not only are you gonna throw a man a birthday party that you barely know, right? You're gonna spend all this money on him, but you can't afford to get my mom out of like her struggles, right? Felix and Oliver talk about, you know, his sister, and he's like, you know, it's really messed up. You're supposed to be here, you're supposed to be my friend, and you're out here like, you know, doing whatever you're doing with my sister. Like, that's really, really, like, you know, not cool. Talk his way out of it in a way that's kind of scary, just a little bit. He's like very casual, very like, no man, that's definitely not what happened, like gaslight king. Felix and Farley end up getting into it, where Farley is kind of expressing his like displeasure with how they have the capacity to do all these things for, you know, a white stranger in their home, but don't even know the names of their footmen who are of color, and won't even help with like his mother. And he's making them like go to him with a begging bowl, in his words, and ask for help. And, you know, they go into that, oh, I don't see color BS, and like, you know, kind of like dismiss Farley and make him assured that he's taken care of, but his mother still won't be, which is really messed up. So all this happens, and I guess Felix gets this idea that he knows that like Farley is probably going to be his biggest obstacle to whatever goal. Because in my brain, again, his goal was still Felix, right? So I'm thinking he just kind of wants him out the way to kind of like have Felix for himself in whatever way that, or capacity that he wants him to be, right? He goes to Farley and is like, oh, you know, I understand your troubles with your mom and this, that, and the third, or whatever. You know, if you ever want somebody to talk about it, it could be me. And for a split second, I think he believes that he has gotten through to like Farley and is like working his little, you know, manipulation tactics to like get whatever he wants from him. And then Farley comes with the clap back of the century and plays this song. It's basically like, I love you, you dress me up, you buy everything for me, you pay my rent and all this other stuff. And it's just very like on the nose of like, yeah, you're basically here because they pay for you to be here. Whoops. This obviously makes Oliver upset. He punches the mirror and goes into Farley's bedroom that night to seduce him, which he does. They end up like hooking up or whatever, and he does like that weird BDSM thing that he does with like, you know, Felix's sister, and it works. And the next morning, there's some sort of like disgruntlement, argument, commotion downstairs to where Farley's being kicked out. And it's revealed that he tried to sell or email somebody about these Palestinian plates that were like, just on for sale or whatever, right? The father, this is unforgivable because like, that's his price collection, or he knew the man that he was trying to sell it to him, and he ends up kicking him out of the house, whatever. He gets kicked out of the house, and this seemingly is like, him getting closer to his goal. He's like in the house, he's got the sister, if he wanted her, I guess. I don't know what's going on with that. And he also has the brother, he's just living life, and they're just like chilling. They're being casual about it, right? Things take an unexpected turn for him, right? So Felix, having like this weird hero complex, intercepts this phone call that was meant for Oliver. But not, when I say intercept, it wasn't like intentional. We didn't see it. It was just implied. He was just basically standing to Oliver like he wanted to take him somewhere. So they get in the car, and it's revealed that Oliver's mother tried to call him multiple times for his birthday. And Oliver realizes that they're driving towards his home, and he's like freaking out, like, you can't take me there, like, I can't do this, like, type deal. And Felix is not taking no for an answer. He's just trying to like help amend the relationship between Oliver and his mother, and it's gonna happen today, basically. This happens, and we get to Oliver's house. The house itself looks really nice, and Felix is like, oh, she must be doing great. She must have turned her life around. This is a really nice house. She's trying. You should, make an effort. And Oliver, very uncomfortable, is still like, just wait outside. And in my brain, I'm thinking like, oh, this is gonna be like bad, like he's gonna go there and the mom's gonna be like strung out still, or in some weird like something like abusive or something. Like my head is like trying to like wrap my brain around what's like happening. So Felix goes and knocks on the door with Oliver because he's gonna be there for his friend no matter what. And it is revealed that Oliver's mother looks like really good, like too good for someone to be a supposed drug addict. I don't know the parameters of addiction and what that looks like, because at the end of the day, you don't know what somebody's struggling with just based off their appearance. Like, it still gave it like, the benefit of the doubt. Felix is kind of like, it's kind of weird, but still whatever about it. And she's talking about how overjoyed she is to like hear from him, and like he disappeared on her. And then that's when the red flags start to like kind of click in. And then she drops the biggest red flag ever. She's like, yeah, your dad's in the back in the garden, and he's just pacing around. He was so excited to meet him here. And obviously this gets heads turned from like everybody in the theater, just everybody in general. Even Felix, he's like, what the hell? Like, your father. And the scene cuts, and it shows his father happy, healthy, and alive, laughing. And Felix is obviously pissed. He's just like going along with it. I guess a bit amused, a bit upset, and Oliver is stressing in the chair over there. And not only is that revealed, it's revealed that Oliver is not an only child. He's a top scholar at Oxford. And I don't know if this was a lie too, but to his parents' knowledge, he's in a bunch of like rowing teams and like very like well off in the school. And so Felix is obviously pissed about this because, these are some pretty major lies. Like the father's death, the not being an only child, and then the mother revealing that, he's always been like this, always wanted to be an only child. And like Felix is like, that makes sense, They go back to the house. And Felix is barely talking to him because he's obviously upset. Felix is like, yeah, so after your birthday, I think it's best if you just like go home, which is like a normal response after figuring out somebody is like not only lying to you, but it's just like overall bad vibes. Like, you lie some pretty major lies and you're just being weird. Like, that's creepy. Like, it's very dark. These aren't just like little white lies. You lied about your father dying. It's just very weird stuff like that. Oliver is very desperate at this point to Felix to be his friend still, and still wanting to be like, just in a friendship with him. And at this point, my brain was like scrambling. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know why he lied and everything, but it kind of made sense a little bit for me in that moment because, he just wanted Felix to feel bad for him and kind of like emotionally blackmailing him into a friendship, basically, which is so messed up. He tries desperately to like get his attention during his party, which fails. And they go to sing happy birthday to him. Nobody knows his name. Everybody in the house is kind of like already turned to him. Felicia's upset because, after they hooked up, he didn't go back to like hook up with her again. It is also revealed that Farley is invited back to the house, even though, you know, they kicked him out for whatever reason. This also upsets Oliver, but Farley is like basically telling him like, you know, this is my home, this is your dream. So, you know, you'll stay over your little dreamland, but this is my reality, and that just is what it is. You know, he's played this game before. He's done this dance before, you know. He's like, you know, if you're trying to get rid of me, you're gonna have to like try harder than that. And it is what it is. So Oliver, he's like crying, upset, and just like, at this point, I think he was really desperate to just save his friendship with Felix. So he's trying so hard to like amend the relationship. He follows Felix to this labyrinth maze, you know, that they have, garden, whatever, where Felix is hooking up with another conquest, and he's like desperately trying to like talk to him. Felix doesn't really want to talk to him, and he basically goes into like this big dramatic reveal of like, you know, or not reveal, but this big dramatic like show where it's like, you know, I just gave you what you wanted to like perform, and basically implying that everybody around Felix performs, so he was just doing that in hopes to be friends with him, and he was his only friend that he's ever had, and he really doesn't want their friendship to be over. And non-surprisingly, Felix is like, you need help, like this behavior is not normal, and I don't know who you are, like everything about you that I knew was a lie. He was saying like, oh, you make my blood run cold. And after that, that's when Oliver kind of realizes that there's no way to mend the friendship, so he's just kind of like defeated, whatever, and leaves. So the next morning, it's like this eerie presence in the air, and everybody is looking or shouting for Felix, and nobody knows what's happening. So it's revealed that Felix dies, like he passes away, and his body is found like in the garden. Everybody's in like this weird shock, almost like coming off of like a drug. That's the only way I can describe it. Like their shock. It's like, it's very like jittery. Some people are jittery. Some people are just like crying, and others are just completely like blank faced to it. Other discovers him, and her immediate reaction was like very like, you know, crying. And then immediately it's like a switch is flipped, and she's like, you know, let's go get ready for lunch. The dad is delusional, trying to like bring Felix back into the house. Obviously he's not getting up. Oliver is just like sitting there, everyone's just sitting there, just not eating but eating, and they are trying to figure out and make arrangements for Felix's body, while also weirdly engaging in conversation about the party to not focus on the fact that Felix is dead. Felix dying isn't just like, not just anyone, it's Felix, you know, their most prized like human, their most prized, like, I don't want to say possession, but yeah, he was like the it child, the, you know, their like glowing radiant sunshine that's just like ripped away from them. Everything in the world halts in that moment, and there's nothing for them to do. As Felix's body is passing, they draw like the curtains in red, and it's like a very heavy atmosphere because the sun basically is gone, you know? See what I did there? The sun is gone from their atmosphere, and suddenly there's nothing for anything to revolve around anymore. So talking about the party, making conversations to not talk about Felix, and this makes Farley upset because he's questioning why Oliver is still there, which is a kind of a valid question, very valid. But I get it in the initial shock though, it kind of makes sense for him to still be there, because like, you know, there's a shock, everyone's just like acting weird, you know, it made sense for him to be there, at least in the moment. But he already didn't like him, so he was like being upset, and Felix points out, or not Felix, Felix dead. Oliver points out that, you know, oh, I feel bad too if I was over there doing a bunch of drugs, you know, the night that somebody died, which for some stupid reason is enough to make the family upset to kick Farley out a second time, but this time for good. Like, don't come back here, don't do nothing, you drug addicts, even though literally everybody in the house was like doing some sort of like drugs, tobacco, drinking. So it just kind of like was silly, very silly to me. I thought it was gonna be something deeper than that. So after they kick Farley out, they have the funeral, and at the funeral they kind of like leave Oliver alone to go do their rock ritual of like throwing Felix's like name on a rock into the river stone, and Oliver is like destroyed, like distraught. So much so that he proceeds to desecrate Felix's grave, which was like, after everything, you know, it was like one thing on top of another, and just like the heavy atmosphere, I was like, it's just too much. Like, it was too much for me in the moment.
My dude.
He's like crying upset, desecrating this man's like grave, which is crazy. He does this, and then Phoenicia is even more like starting to come apart. So she's in the bathtub where Felix, you know, I guess bathed or whatever, and she's just like talking to Oliver and goes on this whole spill about how she kind of like sees through him, you know. He's kind of like this weird dude, you know, and all these problems didn't start happening until he was there. She made some very valid points in that bathtub. Very valid points. And I still was just like, oh, you know, he just lost his lover, y'all. Like, you know, get off of him. Like, it's crazy. It's too much for her. Oliver's kind of like, oh, you're just drunk, whatever. And they share like this weird like kiss, and Phoenicia's like just totally destroyed. And she ends up taking her own life. Family has to start the grieving process over again on a second child, which is crazy. And it's worth mentioning too that the mother, after Felix's death, telling Oliver how he couldn't leave Saltburn anymore. They needed him there. She needed him there for emotional stability, and agreeably, you know, he like is kind of like, oh, okay, you know, I guess so. And, you know, making these weird remarks about Felix's headstone and like other stuff, which also drives Phoenicia to be like, you. After Phoenicia dies, the father approaches Oliver and is like, hey, you know, I think it's time for you to go home, you know, so we can grieve in private, like the family. And Oliver's like, you know, I just don't want to leave, like, you know, the mother in this state. Very creepy type, like, I'm not leaving vibes. They do what they do best, you know, the rich being the rich. And the dad cuts Oliver a check to leave, to which he agrees to do. Fast forward a couple of years, I guess, down the road, and the father ends up dying. It's implied that he took his own life, but isn't confirmed. Oliver, by chance, happens to run into the mother at a floral coffee shop or whatever, and they start talking about the events, and she invites him basically to come back to Saltburn. And you know, it's crazy. In that moment, I still was blinded by everything. We'll get to what I was blinded by in a minute, but just know that like it looked very like innocent. Like interview at the beginning and him talking about everything the way that he was talking about it, interview style, made it seem like it was just kind of like him reminiscing on old times. So I wasn't really tripping off of it, right? It goes to Saltburn, and it is revealed finally that the person he was talking to interview style the whole time was the mother on her deathbed, and that he was basically poisoning her. And everything shifted. Lo and behold, it is also revealed that Oliver plotted on this family's downfall from the beginning. From the very moment of putting a flat tire in Felix's tire to give them a window of opportunity, to faking not having enough money to pay for the beer so that Felix could like help bail him out, poisoning Felix in the field. He's talking about how much he hated him, how much he hated his family, how much ultimate goal was to inherit Saltburn. And that was it. And that's basically how the movie ends. He ends up killing the mother. Before that, she signs over like everything to him, and the ending scene is him dancing around naked in Saltburn in his new home, you know. So yeah, after that, I walked out of the movie theater mad because like I didn't see it coming. I was hoodwinked. I was blinded the whole time. And you know what? That's, yeah. And I will say I liked it because of the surprises. They were genuinely surprising to me, which, does that make me a little naive? Probably, but like it's very hard for me to be naive in a movie, you know? So I think that aspect of it is why I truly like enjoyed it a lot more. And you know, it's crazy because some people will talk about how much they didn't like it, but not in the sense of like, oh, it was a terrible movie, but because of what it did to them. Case in point, I showed my dad the movie Dad, come back.
I'm done.
I think he liked it, but he says that he didn't like it. But
Killed this entire family. Took the wealth. And now he's rich.
another thing I liked about the film was the cinematography was amazing. I like the unique shots that they did, and I love the aesthetic of the movie. It was like a Snapchat filter just pasted on film, and it worked, surprisingly. Soundtrack worked, everything about the movie just worked. Okay, we're gonna get into like some theories, right? Because I wanted to make sense of what I just saw, the reasoning behind it, right? And I wanted so badly to root for Oliver, right? So we're gonna go into a cases for Oliver, and then why ultimately my decision at the end to not be for Oliver. In this film, it's kind of eating the rich, you know, like literally. From the start of the film to the end, you can see everybody's little picks. It's like chipping away at somebody, you know? They make their little comments about his status, about how tragic his life is, about all this other stuff. And it's if you fill that cup up enough, it's gonna get full, it's gonna overflow, you know? So I get that. I 100% get that. But that's not what it was at all. I can understand if it was. And hear me out. If it was, then it wouldn't have been planned from the beginning. It would have been more, you know, more added onto it in the beginning as far as him being outcasted and stuff. But in this case, it's almost saying my words is kind of petty, because it's imagine somebody bumping into you and not saying excuse me, and then you slaughter their whole family for it. That's unhinged. That's crazy. Just I wanted to root for Oliver, he was just truly psychotic. It was just that, and then the other evidence of what his parents said that really sealed the deal for me, because they were talking about how he's always been like this, how he's always wanted to be an only child, and you get the sense that he's always wanted this lifestyle. So as much as I wanted it to be eat the rich type vibe, the poor people flipping it on them, it was, but it also really wasn't, which is what I really liked and appreciated about the film. So yeah, and the fact that literally if you watch it again, you know, knowing what you know, you can see who sees right through Oliver's bullshit, basically. I also want to talk about their relationship, right? It was definitely a love-hate relationship, but you don't do the things that Oliver did if you didn't love somebody. But it was more of an obsessive, if I can't have you, no one can type vibe. And I think it was more so out of convenience. I truly felt that if Felix had reciprocated the feelings that Oliver needed for him to reciprocate, that he would be alive right now. He would be alive in Saltburn, and Oliver would have found another way to obtain his goal. I do think so. But I think out of convenience and out of hurt and anger and frustration, the quickest way for him to obtain his goal was definitely to take the son away. In some capacity, I think it was a little bit easier for him to do what he did because they were rich also as well. It kind of is dehumanizing them. They're not human, they're just rich snobs, you know? Who cares if they you know, disappear? Who cares if all this stuff happens to him? Which I gotta say is a very interesting take for Eat the Rich, you know? So overall, yeah, I thought it was a great movie. I do recommend it to others. I do think that the shocking things that they did in the movie were enough to make it kind of memorable. Not enough for it to be you know, for those people that are interested and fascinated by the idea of the movie as a whole, those are the people that's gonna go back and watch it. For those people that just wanted the shock value, they're just one and done. It's over. But overall, I really like the film. I really do. That's gonna be it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it. That's it. That's the video. Bye bye.